When people begin making pottery, they often chase perfection. They want every bowl perfectly round, every mug perfectly symmetrical, every glaze perfectly smooth, every line exactly where it was intended to be. The goal seems obvious: eliminate mistakes and create something flawless. But something interestingly happens as many potters gain experience. They begin to see beauty differently. The things they once considered flaws often become the very qualities they appreciate most. A slightly uneven rim, a subtle mark left by a finger, a glaze that breaks unexpectedly over a textured surface, a form that leans just enough to reveal the movement of the maker's hand. What once appeared imperfect begins to feel alive. Perhaps this is because perfection can sometimes feel distant. When an object is perfectly uniform, perfectly predictable, and perfectly identical to every other object around it, it can feel impersonal. There is something wrong with precision. In fact, achieving precision requires tremendous skill, but beauty is not always found in perfection alone. Sometimes beauty emerges from character, and character often comes from imperfections. Ceramic teaches this lesson better than almost any other craft because clay is a material that constantly reminds us of our humanity. Every handmade piece carries evidence of touch. The clay records pressure, movement, hesitation, and confidence. It remembers where the hands lingered and where they moved quickly. And after passing through the intense heat of the kiln, those traces remain. The finished piece becomes a record of a human experience rather than a manufactured product. And that human presence is often what makes ceramics feel special. They tell a truth. A glaze that flowed unexpectedly may reveal the condition inside the kiln. A slightly asymmetry may reveal the movement of the wheel. Tiny variations in texture may show where the clay responded differently than expected. These details are not signs of failure, they are evidence of a process. They remind us that the piece was not simply produced, it was made. For centuries, many cultures have recognized this connection between imperfection and beauty. Perhaps one of the most famous examples comes from the Japanese philosophy known as wabi sabi, which embraces impermanence, simplicity, and the beauty of things that are incomplete or imperfect. Rather than hiding flaws, this philosophy encourages us to appreciate them. A crack may tell a story, a weathered surface can reveal history, an irregular form can express individuality. In this view, imperfections are not obstacles to beauty, they are part of beauty itself. Pottery naturally reflects this way of thinking because the ceramic process contains elements that can never be fully controlled. A potter may carefully shape a form, but the clay can shift during drying. A glaze may react differently than expected. The kiln may introduce subtle changes in color, texture, or surface quality. Even the most experienced ceramic artists encounter surprises like this. Instead of resisting these moments, many learn to welcome it. They understand that some of the most beautiful results emerge when creativity and unpredictability meet. There is also something comforting about imperfect ceramics because they mirror real life. Human beings are not perfectly symmetrical. Our lives do not unfold exactly as planned. Our experiences leave marks on us, just as the ceramic process leaves marks on clay. Yet, those marks often become part of what makes us unique. A handmade pot with a slightly uneven edge feels relatable because it reflects the reality of a human being. It reminds us that beauty does not require flawlessness. It requires authenticity in a world increasingly filled with machine-made objects. This idea feels more relevant than ever. Technology allows us to produce things with incredible precision. We can create objects that are nearly identical down to the smallest detail. Yet, many people find themselves drawn to handmade ceramics. Why? Because handmade work contains evidence of life. The subtle variations, the unexpected textures, the small imperfections, they remind us that another person shaped this piece with their own hands. They remind us that perfection is not the only path to beauty. Perhaps that is why a handmade mug often feels warmer than factory made ones, even when they serve exactly the same function. One carries a story, one carries fingerprints, one carries evidence of patience, learning, mistakes, and growth. And maybe that is the lesson ceramics quietly teaches us. Imperfections are not always flaws to be corrected. Sometimes they are the very things that give an object its soul. A perfectly flawless piece may impress us, but an imperfect piece often connects with us because within those small irregularities, we recognize something familiar. We recognize ourselves.